Have you ever noticed how some people seem to carry a quiet light within them? They speak with calm. They move through conflict without becoming consumed by it. They have learned, somehow, to live from a place of inner freedom. And yet, rather than being celebrated, they are often met with suspicion, resentment, even hostility. It is one of the strangest truths of human life. The very people who have done the work, who have grown beyond fear and defensiveness, often attract the sharpest criticism from those still trapped in struggle. Why does this happen? Why do those who have found peace seem to disturb those who have not? The answer lies deep within the architecture of human psychology, in a place where fear and potential collide. Abraham Maslow, one of the great minds of the 20th century, spent his life studying this paradox. He wanted to understand not what makes us sick, but what makes us whole. And in doing so, he discovered something profound. Growth is not neutral. It is not invisible. When one person begins to actualize their potential, to become more fully themselves, it creates a mirror. And that mirror reflects back to others what they have not yet become. This is not about judgment. It is not about superiority. It is about something far more human. Maslow called it the hierarchy of needs. At the base of this pyramid are survival, safety, belonging. These are the needs we must meet before we can grow. But many people, through no fault of their own, remain locked in these lower levels. They are still fighting for security, still seeking approval, still trying to prove their worth. And when they encounter someone who has moved beyond that struggle, someone who no longer needs validation from the outside world, something inside them stirs. Not admiration, not curiosity, but discomfort. Because growth, real growth, exposes the unmet needs in others. It reveals the places where they have stopped, the places where fear has built walls. The self-actualized soul does not mean to do this. They are simply living authentically. But their presence alone becomes a challenge. It whispers a question that many are not ready to hear. If they can be free, why am I not? If they can let go, why am I still holding on? If they can forgive, accept, create, why can't I? And so the resentment begins. Not because the self-actualized person has done anything wrong, but because they remind others of what is possible. Impossibility, when you are still living in fear, feels like an accusation. It feels like a silent judgment on the choices you have made, the compromises you have accepted, the dreams you have abandoned. The self-actualized soul becomes a living reminder of the road not taken. Think about this for a moment. When someone in your life has found peace, truly found it, how does it make you feel? If you are honest with yourself, you might notice a strange mixture of emotions. Part of you admires them. Part of you wants what they have. But another part, a quieter part, feels threatened, because their peace suggests that peace is possible. And if peace is possible, then your suffering might be optional. And if your suffering is optional, then you must face the uncomfortable truth that you have been choosing it. This is the paradox at the heart of human development. We say we want to grow. We say we want to evolve. But when we meet someone who has actually done it, someone who has shed their armor and stepped into authenticity, we often recoil. We find reasons to dismiss them. We call them naive, detached, cold, or unrealistic. We accuse them of not caring, of being selfish, of having it easier than we do. Anything to avoid the real question? Why have they grown, and I have not? Maslow understood this deeply. He saw that the journey towards self-actualization is not a simple climb. It is a confrontation with everything you have been avoiding. Every fear you have buried. Every wound you have refused to heal. Every truth you have been too afraid to face. And most people, understandably, do not want to make that journey. It is easier to stay where you are. It is safer to remain in the familiar territory of unmet needs, of external validation, of defensive patterns. But the self-actualized person has made a different choice. They have decided that growth, however painful, is better than stagnation. They have chosen authenticity over acceptance. They have walked through the fire of self-examination and emerged on the other side. Not perfect, but whole. And their wholeness, their integration, their peace becomes a mirror that reflects the incompleteness in others. This is not their intention. This is not their goal. but it is the inevitable result of living truthfully. And here is where the resentment deepens. Because the self-actualized soul does not need what others need. They do not need constant reassurance. They do not need drama to feel alive. They do not need conflict to feel validated. They have found something within themselves that others are still searching for outside, and this independence, this inner sufficiency, is profoundly threatening to those who have built their entire identity around dependence, around need, around the belief that happiness comes from external sources, so they attack. Not with reason, not with logic, but with emotion, with accusations, with projections. They call the self-actualized person arrogant for having boundaries. They call them selfish for prioritizing their own growth. They call them cold for refusing to participate in dysfunction. And beneath all these accusations is a single painful truth. I am afraid to become what you have become. I am afraid to let go of what you have let go of. I am afraid to face what you have faced. This is the paradox of growth. The very thing that could save us, that could free us, that could make us whole, is the thing we resist most fiercely. And those who have overcome that resistance, who have done the inner work, who have actualized their potential, become targets for the unresolved pain of those who have not. Maslow believed that human beings are motivated by two kinds of forces: deficiency motivation and growth motivation. Deficiency motivation comes from lack. It drives us to seek food when we are hungry, safety when we are threatened, love when we feel alone. This is natural. This is human. But deficiency motivation is reactive. It pulls us toward what we do not have. It keeps us scanning the world for danger, for rejection, for loss. It organizes our entire existence around filling holes, around patching wounds, around defending against threats, both real and imagined. Growth motivation is different. It arises not from lack, but from abundance. It is the impulse to become, to create, to express, to realize our fullest potential. When someone operates from growth motivation, they are no longer ruled by fear. They are no longer obsessed with what others think. They have met their basic needs, and now they are free to explore who they truly are. This is the space of the self-actualized soul. This is the territory of genuine freedom. But here is the tension. Most people live their entire lives in deficiency mode. They are still trying to feel safe, still trying to belong, still trying to prove they are worthy of love, still trying to earn respect, still trying to accumulate enough wealth, status, or approval to finally feel secure. And when they meet someone who has transcended that struggle, someone who no longer needs external approval, it destabilizes them. It challenges the very foundation of how they have organized their life. Asterisk. Think of it this way. Imagine two people standing in a dark room. One has found a light switch, the other has not. The one with light can now see clearly. They can move freely. They can explore the space without fear. They can appreciate the beauty around them, the textures, the colors, the possibilities. But the one still in darkness does not celebrate this. Instead, they feel exposed. They feel vulnerable. They feel judged. Because now the contrast is undeniable. Now they can no longer pretend that the darkness is all there is. And rather than searching for their own light, they may resent the one who found it first. They may accuse them of showing off. They may claim the light is an illusion. They may insist that darkness is the only reality. This is not cruelty. It is self-protection. When someone has built their identity around struggle, around suffering, around being a victim of circumstance, the presence of a self-actualized person threatens that identity. It suggests that change is possible, that growth is available, that the walls they have built are not permanent structures, but temporary shelters. And for someone who has made peace with their limitations, who has justified their pain, who has constructed an entire worldview around their wounds, that suggestion is unbearable. Maslow also spoke of something he called the Jonah complex, the fear of one's own greatness, the terror of becoming everything you could be. He named it after the biblical prophet who fled from his calling, who tried to hide from his destiny, who chose the belly of a whale over the responsibility of his potential. Because with potential comes responsibility. With freedom comes the loss of excuses. With growth comes the end of victimhood. And for many people, it is easier to remain small, to stay hidden, to blame the world, and to face the daunting work of transformation. The self-actualized soul has faced this fear. They have walked through it. They have stared into the abyss of their own potential and said yes. And on the other side, they have found something extraordinary. Not perfection, not bliss, not an end to all problems, but a kind of deep, unshakable peace. A sense of alignment with their own truth. A feeling of coming home to themselves. And this peace, paradoxically, becomes a source of irritation for those still caught in the storm. Because peace, real peace, is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not demand attention. It does not try to convince anyone of anything. It simply is. In this quiet presence, this calm certainty, this lack of need for validation makes others uncomfortable. They mistake stillness for indifference. They confuse boundaries with coldness. They interpret self-sufficiency as arrogance, because they cannot imagine being at peace without having defeated someone, without having proven something. Without having won some external battle, the self-actualized person has discovered a different kind of victory, an internal one. They have won the battle against their own fear, their own ego, their own need to control and defend. And this internal victory, invisible to those still fighting external wars, appears to be no victory at all. It looks like surrender. It looks like weakness. It looks like giving up. But it is actually the opposite. It is the ultimate strength. The strength to be vulnerable. The strength to be authentic. The strength to be whole. Maslow noticed something else in his studies. The people who had achieved self-actualization were not necessarily the happiest in a superficial sense. They did not walk around with permanent smiles. They did not avoid pain or difficulty. In fact, they often experienced profound sadness, deep grief, existential loneliness. But they experienced these emotions fully. They did not run from them. They did not numb them. They did not project them onto others. They felt what they felt, processed it, integrated it, and moved forward. This emotional maturity, this capacity to hold complexity, is something that people still trapped in deficiency motivation cannot understand. They see the self-actualized person experiencing sadness and think, see, they are not really happy. They see them setting boundaries and think, see, they are cold. They see them choosing solitude and think, see, they are lonely. But they are missing the point. The self-actualized soul is not trying to avoid negative emotions. They're trying to live authentically, and authenticity includes the full spectrum of human experience. Joy and sorrow, connection and solitude, strength and vulnerability, light and shadow. This integration, this wholeness, is what makes them free. And it is also what makes them threatening. Because when you are no longer afraid of your own darkness, you cannot be manipulated by fear. When you no longer need approval, you cannot be controlled by opinion. When you have made peace with your mortality, you cannot be intimidated by loss. And people who rely on fear, approval, and control to maintain their relationships find themselves powerless in the presence of such freedom, so they do what threatened people have always done. They attack. They undermine. They gaslight. They project. They accuse the free person of being the problem, and the self-actualized soul, because they have done the work, because they understand human psychology, because they have compassion for the suffering that drives such behavior, often responds with silence. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they know that words cannot reach someone who is not ready to hear them, that growth cannot be forced, that each person must walk their own path in their own time. And this silence, this refusal to defend or explain, is often interpreted as the final proof of their guilt. See, they are not even trying to make things right. See, they do not care. But the truth is, they care deeply. They care enough to let others have their own experience. They care enough to not rescue people from the consequences of their own choices. They care enough to trust that everyone is on their own journey, even when that journey looks like resistance, anger, or blame. Asterisk. So what does this mean for you? If you have done the work, if you have faced your shadows, if you have chosen growth over comfort, you may have felt this resentment. You may have been called cold, detached, arrogant, or indifferent. You may have been criticized for your boundaries, for your clarity, for your refusal to participate in drama. You may have lost friends. You may have disappointed family members. You may have walked away from relationships that once defined you, and it may have hurt, because you did not set out to offend anyone. You simply wanted to live authentically. But here is the wisdom Maslow offers. Their resentment is not about you. It is about them. It is about their unmet needs, their unresolved fears, their resistance to change. It is about the fact that your growth has forced them to confront their own stagnation. Your peace has highlighted their chaos. Your boundaries have exposed their enmeshment. Your authenticity has revealed their masks. And while it is natural to feel sadness about this, it is not your responsibility to shrink in order to make others comfortable. You are not required to dim your light so that others do not feel blind. Asterisk. Becoming whole, becoming fully human, is not about transcending your humanity. It is about embracing it. It is about accepting your flaws, your limitations, your failures, and still choosing to grow. It is about understanding that you are both broken and beautiful, both finite and infinite. This is the paradox of self-actualization. You do not become perfect. You become real. You do not rise above the human condition. You descend fully into it, accepting every part of yourself, integrating every fragment, healing every wound you are capable of healing, and making peace with the ones you cannot. And when you become real, you give others permission to do the same. Not everyone will accept this invitation. Some will turn away. Some will attack. Some will try to pull you back into the darkness, back into the familiar patterns of dysfunction and codependency. But some will see your light and begin to search for their own. Some will recognize in your freedom a possibility they had forgotten. Some will be inspired by your courage to take the first steps on their own journey toward wholeness. And that is enough. That is more than enough. Maslow once wrote that the self-actualized person is one who has become everything they are capable of becoming. Not everything society expects. Not everything others demand. Not everything their parents wanted or their culture prescribed, but everything they, in their deepest truth, were meant to be. This is the ultimate act of courage. To live as yourself fully and completely, without apology. To honor your own nature, your own values, your own path. To trust your own experience more than the opinions of others. To choose growth even when it costs you relationships, status, or security. This does not mean you become selfish. In fact, Maslow found that self-actualized people were often deeply caring, deeply compassionate, deeply connected to humanity as a whole. But their compassion came from abundance, not from need. They helped others because they wanted to, not because they needed validation. They loved because they were full, not because they were empty. They gave from their overflow, not from their deficit. And this kind of giving, this kind of love, is sustainable. It does not burn out. It does not create resentment. It does not lead to martyrdom, but it also does not tolerate dysfunction. It does not enable destructive patterns. It does not sacrifice truth for harmony. And this is where the conflict arises. Because many people confuse love with accommodation. They believe that if you truly cared, you would tolerate their dysfunction. You would enable their avoidance. You would join them in their suffering. And when you refuse, when you maintain your boundaries, when you insist on health and truth, they feel abandoned. They feel rejected. They feel unloved. But you are not abandoning them. You are simply refusing to abandon yourself. You are choosing to love them from a place of wholeness rather than from a place of woundedness. You are offering them the truth rather than comfortable lies. You are modeling what it looks like to take responsibility for your own happiness, your own growth, your own life. And while this may not feel like love to someone who is used to codependency, it is actually the deepest form of love. It is the love that says, I believe in your capacity to grow. I believe in your potential to become whole. I will not insult you by treating you as helpless as you move through this world. as you encounter resistance. As you feel the weight of others' projections, remember this: growth is not a betrayal. Peace is not a privilege. Wholeness is not selfishness. You have every right to become who you are. And those who resent you for it are simply not ready to become who they are. That is their journey, not yours. You cannot walk it for them. You cannot force them to grow. You cannot make them see what they are not ready to see. So let them go. Let them struggle. Let them blame. Let them project. Let them call you names. Let them tell stories about who you are. And you continue walking your path, not in arrogance, not in superiority, not in judgment, but in quiet, steadfast commitment to your own becoming. Because the world does not need more people pretending to be small. It does not need more people hiding their light. It does not need more people sacrificing their truth to maintain false peace. The world needs people brave enough to be whole. People willing to face their fears. People strong enough to stand in their truth. People compassionate enough to let others have their own experience. People wise enough to know that growth is not a competition, but a personal journey. People loving enough to shine their light even when others curse the brightness. And that, more than anything, is what Abraham Maslow believed. That humanity's greatest hope lies not in perfection, but in the courage to grow. To face our fears. To meet our needs. To actualize our potential. To become, at last, fully alive. Not for the approval of others. Not for external rewards. But because it is our nature. Because we are built for growth. Because somewhere deep within us, beneath all the conditioning and trauma and fear, is a seed of potential waiting to bloom. You have watered that seed. You have given it light. You have protected it from those who would trample it. And now it is growing. And yes, some people will resent the flower you have become. But others, the ones who are ready, will catch the scent of your blossoming and remember that they too carry seeds within them. They too can grow. They too can become whole. And in that remembering, in that awakening, lies the hope of the world. So bloom fully, unapologetically, authentically, and trust that those who are meant to find you will find you. Those who are meant to understand will understand, and those who are not will pass by. And that is exactly as it should be. Asterisk.